Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and, as always, we welcome you to our Around the Hearth series, where you can sit down, get your beverage of choice, there you go, and in doing so, warm your toes by the fire as we sit down and discuss things. This time, discussing things that are, currently relevant to the search engines and stuff like that. The Shin Megami Tensei series, specifically 5, came out, or V, whichever one you want to say. And we were like, you know what? That actually has some cool stuff to bring, cool ideas and cool setting to bring to a tabletop game. So that's what we're going to be talking about this time. We're going to actually do 2 discussions. The first one is this time, it is going to be over mainly the setting from Shin Megami Tensei and that kind of setting and rules work around and the type of things you could do with that. And then we'll hold Persona until the next chat, which will come out not the week you're seeing this, but the week after. So still be good in the engine. So I think that's all I've got for discussing and introducing. As far as announcements or anything like that, always less than 5 minutes. You can time us. Here we go. That I already did basically ours with that introduction of when these were coming out. Also, I'm going to throw up some ideas after we're done recording this for the next series of chats that we do, because there was one requested by some viewers, and I'm hesitant to do it without everybody being on board, so we'll see about that. But, because it would take a little while. But that's all that I have. Is there anything from Avenue Studios?
I'm Dan, Avenue Studios. We are on Rumble now as well, some of our content, so we're slowly mirroring it over there. So if you're out that neck of the internet, check us out. And we've got Jacob's Lab going now, and of course Bomb Squad, and we'll have some new Open Legend content we're reviewing currently, so Druid's Table will be doing an episode on that probably next year. So keep an eye out in January or so.
All right. It's so nice to have content planned out for ahead of time. So
yeah.
These chats, they're just like, hey, what are we talking about this week, guys? Oh, I don't know. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
We're
GMs. We wing it.
We're like those buzzards in the Jungle Book. I don't know what you want to talk about. I don't know.
Oh, my gosh.
But don't start that again. So.
Classic. Well done.
And our regular spotlighter is Levi. So
yes.
Yeah, who you
I
got?
am spotlighting. It is a Kickstarter that has already been fully funded, but would be interesting. November is Native American Heritage Month, and this is Coyote and Crow. It's a sci-fi if America had stayed specifically Native American far in the future. There's some interesting things going on. I don't know a lot about the mechanics, but a lot of people seem excited about it.
Sweet.
It'll be interesting to see how they set out the demographics on that one, because not all the tribes were very friendly with each other. I wonder who won out on that one, or if they went with some kind of Iroquois kind of tribal alliance on it.
Based on some of what I've read about this, I haven't seen the exact specifics of that, but the vibe they give is much more that like not a unified tribe, but definitely more of a coalition.
Mm-hmm. Kind of have to do that, I guess, with the way America works. So, I mean, the Mexican tribes, the tribes we associate with Mexico, probably would have had a larger swath up into that, what we call California and stuff, because of the way it just moves around. I'm interested to see the map. So
cool.
It'll definitely I definitely have to see, and I also know I make nerd enough about the topic that I don't want to say too much.
Oh.
Fair enough.
But it just looks cool, and it's like, hey, one of the things I like about the fact that it's already funded is that it's already gonna happen, so you can put money towards it or not. Maybe wait till it's officially out.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to worry about as much it being done.
Like it not working out.
Yeah.
Because they do, in fact, have over $1 million.
I mean, that's enough to do a setting. I'm
That's enough
throwing
to
that
do-
out there.
Well, it's a setting and a system.
That's enough to do a setting in a system. I'm throwing that out there.
So it's at the point that they have the money to accomplish their goal,
Awesome.
which is nice.
Mhm.
It was apparently funded in 45 minutes, according to their Kickstarter.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it sounds like an interesting setting. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
I'm not
So
sure.
there's
Oh.
my spotlight.
Okie dokie. And what's the name of it specifically?
Coyote and Crow.
That's right. Coyote and Crow. So there
Cool.
you go. You can check that out on Kickstarter, and I think we're done with announcements, yeah? I think so.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's get into this. Does anybody specific want to start, or do you guys want me to start since it was me throwing y'all into this topic? I'm up for either one.
Yeah, I say, because I only have some thoughts on mechanic things, but I want to go based off you guys who know it a little better.
Okay. All right, then. So, long ago in a distant time of 1990... Oh, no. No, it's not...
It's getting farther away.
Every day. Every day. But I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So, the idea behind... And, this can differ depending on who you ask, but we're going to try and keep it simple with the division of what is and isn't going to be considered for this. Shin Megami Tensei has some core features in it that are different enough to the Persona series that we would want to have this be what its discussion is. And also the things we would go for would be more along those lines. So if you have ideas about what you think what you think Shin Megami Tensei is, you can leave them in the comment section below, but keep it civil because we're going to go into just a few in the 30-ish minutes that we have. So, based upon what I've seen, the four core things that Shin Megami Tensei has is a recent post-apocalyptic event, and usually it's based around a modern time period to that time, or a recent past, or a recent future, or a soon-to-come future. It's right around our modern era, so that offers its own type of setting, fun stuff. With that, it also has the idea of the summoning of summoned beings or different beings, spiritual beings, and the Shin Megami Tensei series doesn't really have a preference for which mythology, it's just all of them. They just kind of take what they want from all different types of things. And those demons, they kind of shorthand everything into a demon, even angels or mythological beings like Odin, they shorthand that into demon. And then they have the idea of fusing those demons to make stronger demons. So those three things of recent post-apocalyptic event with spiritual beings of some kind and demon fusion of those beings are three core things, with the fourth being the idea of the push-turn system, which I think would be really interesting to try and work into a tabletop game.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the four things that I kind of have as an idea. And
I'll just clarify for those like me who don't know it as well. The push turn is when if you get a critical success or you maximize on the weakness of an enemy, you could potentially get an extra attack or an extra turn, and vice versa if you do poorly.
Right. It's like a half turn system. It's an immediate reward for hitting those, for paying attention to the weaknesses and strengths of an enemy.
Okay.
So that's the idea behind that one. So I like that.
Okay.
That's the mechanical one I really like. And then the other stuff has some mechanics to it as well. But we can do the non-mechanic stuff first, because that might get a little crunchy. But the post-apocalyptic thing, that's a really fun thing to play with, especially when you include kind of modern twist to it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you guys have anything about that you might want to throw out there?
And we want to start with the non-mechanical implications first, correct?
Yeah, that way people can be like, oh, well, what about the mechanics afterwards? They see, you gotta watch the recipe, or go to fast forward. It's up to you guys.
Nice.
I just want to make sure before I start talking.
Okay.
Okay, so I am uncertain how it always works with Megaten. I, for my own sake, have a nice little thing of the history of Megaten, with an interesting concept of demons summoned by computers.
Mm. Yep.
I think something that really brings up as an interesting aspect is actually getting to play in the apocalypse to survive to have a post-apocalyptic game. I think there's an almost frustrating lack of apocalypse in and of its, like, apocalypse survival games. They're so often that's nowhere near, or hey, it's 100 years past.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, especially for players maybe a little more like Dan and I who hadn't known much, it would be really interesting to bring in these mechanics from a game series they don't know about as the apocalypse is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then the kind of second phase of the game would be where they get to actually more actively use these apocalyptic elements. Right, actually, so in the Shin Megami Tensei sense, making the pacts with these beings that have come over.
Right.
Would be in the more post-apocalyptic phase.
Yep. And the thing that you're referring to in the lore of SMT is the demon summoning program is usually worked into the whichever game you find of Shin Megami Tensei, whether that's 1 through 5 now. There's this idea of, like you said, technology being used to either summon demons or in some way interacting with them. It's not like that in Nocturne. It's more like the technology was used to bring about the apocalypse, rather than it being the thing you necessarily use to do things, to get the demons, except for the fusion. But the idea of taking things we know in modern science, or even, you can even do pseudoscience and, all those far out things when you have these type of settings of a recent post-apocalyptic event that is brought about by some thing that would really be kind of pseudoscience-y in real life, but you make it real in that setting, and that can be fun.
Yeah, I could totally see some kind of quantum mechanics experimentation gone very wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could do the jank things that, like, some people believe that, like, plateaus are ancient trees that were cut down.
Oh. Those big mesas and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, there's that thing, so there would be some idea of, like, those revolutionizing and all of the mountains and rocks and whatnot turning back to trees and growing, and, like, their roots spreading miles. Like, you could have some real jank world biology if you get real deep into, like, pseudoscience and conspiracy theories.
Yeah, like...
You can, like, get some...
You could take that idea and do, like, an Yggdrasil campaign where there's this Norse mythology influence. And those are the demons you're messing with. When we say demons in SMT, it's more like the mythology behind...
Spiritual beings.
Yeah, like more like a tulpa. A tulpa is a type of a spiritual thing that is powered by the beliefs of the people around it. So, like, if you believe something is real, then it is. And
placebo effect turned physical.
Right. The more someone believes it, the more it exists, the more power it has. That's kind of how it is, and kind of not. These things do exist outside of the characters that believe in them, but there's this idea of more power as they either gain through fusion or they gain from the, I guess in the case of the main characters, gain through the use of the demons themselves serving them. So.
Well, I also like, too, because all of them are based around Tokyo pretty much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or mostly.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing with most Japanese anime. But
yeah, which is totally understandable. So you could either go with that, or I think, and going off of like the Yggdrasil, is picking other locations, because theoretically the apocalypse has happened everywhere. So if you have you could move this to a setting that you're more comfortable with. Like for me, up here in New York, do New York City or something like that. It has kind of the same feel.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man.
I guess you could have a really jacked up, weird kind of Spider-Man tulpa being, and just take a name from mythology, take a name or something like that. Like the series mascot is like this Jack Bro. That's what his name is. Jack Frost is this white one with the big smile, and he's like a snow type of themed one. And then there's Pyro Jack, and I think there's another one, Ripper Jack or something like that. And they're like, if you look in some of the backgrounds of the SMT cinematics, I think it was in SMT 5. This creature, SMT 5 and 4, I think maybe, they had Jack Bro on like a sign or something. It implies then that Jack Bro was a mascot, and people had, like a tulpa, had a belief about it.
Oh, interesting.
But then that thing has sentience when interacting with the demon summoning program, or was a demon that has been kind of imprinted on the consciousness of the people in that setting. So that's why he's able to pull and exist as strongly as he does, and stuff. So those might be fun ideas too.
Yeah.
And you can have guns shooting demons and blah 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 blah.
Yes,
stuff.
always good.
Yeah. But I guess part of the point I was going with there was that, like, if you wanted a strange lore and you wanted these very strong tulpa beings, like, in a sense, our stories and movies are modern pseudo-myths. They're myths with full intention to be fake, but there's a thing that, like, in a post-apocalyptic setting, drawing out and hoping for those heroes could be the sort of thing that makes them just real enough to show up. And you could have a very strange game drawing from a lot more modern creations.
That would be fun to explore too, because basically Superman is the modern myth of the Ubermensch, the ultimate being.
Yeah.
So that's not far from the truth of the idea that you have these myths, that the things that we have now are basically the myths that they had before, except we tend to worship less and just, admire more. And that'd be a really interesting idea too, because if you're going to play into that really hard, you would have to include some kind of mechanic with belief, and whether you're like will or your mental stats affecting how powerful a demon or a tulpa or whatever you want to call it you could summon. So you can't get Superman until you're like maxed out on your as like a 10 will or something like that in Open Legend or something.
So you could also, instead of being like, rather than directly your stats, what you'd have to do is you would have to take a bunch of different similar weaker figures, right?
Oh, so take the Hercules, a strongman figure from the comic, from something.
Yeah, like Luke Cage would be like a good one, who's like pretty tough, but like he's got the strength and the near invulnerability, but he doesn't have everything of Superman. Right. So like, and you do that, and you have to build a Superman out of other weaker heroes.
Yeah.
I like that.
And that's where your fusion idea comes in.
Exactly.
Right. All right. That's pretty solid way to do it if you're going to go for modern figures. And it leads good into the mechanics part. So to summarize on the setting part, there are multiple different ways and ideas to do that recent post-apocalyptic setting. And you can play with, depending on how you want to do it, you can play with how much technology does or does not work in that post-apocalyptic setting, whether there's advanced or not so advanced technology now. because 4 did that also. It mixed kind of a feudal Japan mixed with Europe, and then had this modern stuff in it, like a machine, there, like the demon summoning program machine on their wrist type of thing. That's both futuristic and not. So you can do that with your setting. And now we can get into the kind of idea of after you've set it in whichever town you're specifically in. Oh, and that was another thing to mention. You have pre-built dungeons. If you go with the town, you have pre-built dungeons. That's why Tokyo.
That's powerful.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Skyscrapers, parking lots that go down and up, basements, subway systems. That you've got a whole host of different things you could do.
There is just the sheer point that, like, even not specifically SMT, like, just taking those maps could be useful for a lot of games.
That was one of the things I liked about doing the Fallout Fort Smith, was I was able to take Fort Smith and be like, what would be some cool things in this town that I know that would happen and kind of fit with the Fallout lore. And it was a lot of fun to do. So that's a really fun exercise for your brain. But we got to get into the mechanics at some point. So let's get into the mechanics. So we've got this post-apocalyptic setting. We've got this SMT setting kind of feel to it, whether we're using modern or actual beings whether you're using like modern comic book mythological lore or you're using lore from Roman gods or however you want to do it. You've got that. Now you have to figure out the core mechanics of the press turn system and the idea of summoning and powering up other demons with demons. And this is where I think it starts to become a harder thing to convert, especially with the demon summoning and having them, because you run into not just turns and the economics of time and stuff like that, because if everybody's a Nahubino or everybody's a Demi-Fiend, then everybody's got like 4 demons on their side or whatever, and it's like, whew, that might get a little tough. So
I had 2 thoughts I could throw out and see if any of them jive with you guys. Because as I was thinking, because of course the game's designed for a single player to be playing. The 2 thoughts I had, the initial thought was, well, what if the party is made up of a certain set of demons, so everyone's playing a starter one, and the fusion stuff is ways that they level up, fusing other demons into them. Or my other thought was more simple. Everybody could be, what is it, the Nohabino? Is that how you say it?
Well, it depends on which one. In 5, it's the Nohabino.
I was watching 5. Yeah.
It's the Nohabino.
So if you're something like that, it could be that the demons are some kind of items. Each of the demons are items, and that way you could put uses on them to match, the expenditure of, I think it's SP they use.
Okay.
So, and then you could also have a fusion mechanic for upgrading the items, which are the demons. So those were my 2 thoughts for dealing with sitting at a table and playing with a party of people.
Okay. So what about you, Levi? Did you have ideas before I burst into anything?
So, as you are a person who has run a solo game for a nice little bit, there is the fair point that, like, there are times where just 2 people want to run a game together, and, like, making, like, this is the perfect lore for someone to make a party for combat, and then have their main character for their social exploits of in the game, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, hey, here is my combat mode with all of my character sheets.
Yep.
And here is my social mode, and that's a really good way to be able to, like, because one of the core problems with solo games is that any slight mess up in the balance or roll luck can be an instant kill for one person that usually the other party members will save them from. And this will prevent that issue in a solo game. The other side of it is I really do like abstracting the demon fusion and growing. It's just like, hey, as you build your character up, we're totally going to make reasonable reasons for what all demons happened to merge to make you, to have that party sense. Though that does have some issues with the roleplay side of the game. Unless, can demons more naturally interact with people?
Yes, because in the SMT series, you can either fuse demons or recruit them. And so you can convince them to join your party. That's how you get your first set of demons, and then you can do it in the game and keep on doing it and get more demons, get more creatures. SMT was actually, well, technically Megami Tensei, not Shin Megami Tensei, but that's different can of worms. That's like going back into the game history. The franchise has the idea of monster collecting before Pokemon did it and made it a big deal, or before Digimon did it and made it a big deal. The idea of that particular type of game profile and the idea between negotiation and combat are not separate. These demons want different things. They'll remember in 5. From what I understand from the reviews, they will remember you if you interact with a certain demon, and you interact with that demon again. They'll remember you in the combat, and you can talk to them again, or you'll meet them again in the encounter, and then you can be like, "Oh yeah, I know you. You did this for me, so you want me to join with you? Okay, I'll join your party this time. After I ran away that time," or something like that. And so you can have these recurring demons. Now, I may be misinterpreting the review, so if I am, you can leave a comment down below. So, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. I implore you.
Tell me why.
Ain't nothing but... Oh, no songs right now. We're getting into it. Though, I mean, that is something to bring up. If you ever wanted to have soundtracks for your games, I mean, if you're setting it in SMT, you may as well use it. They've got some really good music. So, yeah. But, so the separation of negotiation and combat are not there in SMT. So you can actually just have somebody make a roll for intimidation or diplomacy, depending on which system you're using and how much that succeeds. And that success meter might go up and down. And you as the GM you don't have to remember every demon. You only have to remember the demons that they do this with. So you don't worry about it. Oh man, there's like, 500 something different demons that they have in SMT. And it's like, oh no, I gotta do all 500. No, you don't have to remember all 500. You just have to figure out, okay, this is what this one demon of this one pixie that they interacted with. This pixie wants this, and this. So.
Yeah.
But I think...
Well, and go ahead.
I think that's something that a lot of people that get frustrated with the game mechanics can be like, well, let's just throw the mechanics out and have some fun.
I did really like that, just watching the games that the world is very reactive to you, which that aspect of it does translate very well to a tabletop. Because side quests to get demons, there's a lot of dungeon crawling in there. I think there's a lot to work with.
And one of the complaints that you do see about SMT is that it's more plot focused and less character focused. But that changes when you take it to tabletop. Because now you can have both.
Right.
So.
Yeah, a lot. Your options then open up even more. So what do you guys think about if you have a party larger than just one? Because for sure, this would work. It would work really well for a one-on-one game. It's perfectly set up for that, I think.
Yeah.
But
like
if
a
you
one-on-one
are
game,
working-
you're just saying, okay, you can play as, like if you're in D&D, okay, you can play the Summoner, and you can do this, or Pathfinder, or
Right.
even in Open Legend, you can play the Summoner.
Right. Yep.
But, like, so figuring out your suggestion is trying to figure out how to do it with multi-party.
Right. Because I always tend to like those guys, and I like this setting. I would love to bring it to a table with a bunch of people traveling through this post-apocalyptic world with demons. I mean, it sounds like a good time.
Yeah,
It does.
yeah. Will your party end up pursuing the law, the chaos, or the neutral endings of your campaign? You don't know. That's
set up.
fun. Yeah, that's fun. But just seeing what they'll do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really, I mean, if you went to the trouble of playing it with your group, you could turn it into a scenario and have those 3 endings kind of set up and, directed to that, and whichever one they kind of pick.
You would have just little tally marks every time they do something. You tally. That was kind of lawful. That was neutral. That was evil, or something like that.
Ooh, that's almost like that's a foreshadow to the possible discussion in the future. But for doing this type of game with multiple people, I think, like, spoilers for the Persona video, but the Persona video is going to be a lot easier to convert as far as that for parties. But for Shin Megami, I'd say that you can,
and not losing that it still feels SMT too. That's, I think, the tricky part.
I think one thing you could do is have it to where you worked the belief system, because you're not necessarily playing in SMT's universe. You're just taking inspiration from it. So what you could do is say that this group of people is a group of demons. They get to pick whatever type of creature, not necessarily demons, because you're using a bestiary or a monster manual in D&D or Pathfinder or whatever.
Right.
So they could just be monsters. They're a group of monsters, and they are, through the idea of a tulpa, they are their own tulpa. They believe so heavily in what they want that they're manifesting a tulpa. And that tulpa is the Nahabino or the Demi-Fiend. And so they, through their actions, further the goals of their tulpa, their avatar, so that they impose their will upon the world. Because that's one of the things about SMT. You're coming into a post-apocalyptic, but it's not dying, it's rebirth. It's Shin Megami Tensei, which goes to a true goddess rebirth. Is what that, I mean, literal words, but it's rebirth, the true rebirth of the goddess, or something like that. So they're in this apocalypse, but they are a group of people, people possibly, but probably monsters, or people and monsters. You could do a monster group party, a mixed party with this,
right,
and have them come together, and their interaction makes a tulpa. They create a group, and they align with each other enough that they've created a tulpa, a being that can be the influencer on this recreation.
Yep.
Be their reason, if you want to use the Nocturne word for it.
I like that too, linking back to Levi's idea of starting with the apocalypse, of you could start with a couple sessions of the apocalypse, bringing the party together. And in a session where they come together, they can then establish this tulpa that they've created after having experienced the apocalypse. That could be that. I really like. That's a great idea. And then with the fusion stuff, what do you guys think about? I like thinking from an Open Legend standpoint. I like the idea of actually tracking what demons you encounter, and that maybe putting restrictions on when you level up. If you want to get access to extraordinary abilities or something, you need to have certain demons that you're fusing with. So that was one thought I had to keep with that whole SMT feel.
Yeah. I was having, also from the Open Legend perspective, though also from other systems, the idea that, like, how you gain XP would be through fusion.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like, if you really want to tie that SMT vibe hardcore into it, your characters do not level up until you use fusion.
Yeah, I could see that as doing that.
That's very system agnostic too, so you could apply that to anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and that gets, like, it's like, hey, the first couple things, like, you know, you're gonna get some help from these, because using Pathfinder, and specifically demons, because it's the word that's on my head, the first thing you do to get a bit of a power-up is you team up with some imps.
Okay.
Right? But it's like, as time goes on, like, level 2 is going to be more helpful than those imps.
Yeah. I could see that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The action economy because of having to rework the push turn system, the action economy won't change as much. Like, we're changing that. So, you could play around with that and make that less influential on the action, more numbers, less influential on the action economy than actually having a few strong people.
That actually implies that Pathfinder 2nd Edition might be a good fit for this.
You get back in some
how
of the
numbers hit.
Yeah, because you get 3 actions in Pathfinder 2e. So
right.
And so what you could do is you don't get a full turn back in SMT. You get, well, it depends on which one you do, but you get like a half turn back. So you could say, okay, if you hit their weakness, you get an extra minor action, or you want to get an extra this. But if they hit your weakness, then you have this. And this is where I think it might be better if everybody was a demon or an angel or a monster of some kind, something out of the monster manual that's around the same strength, and they start that way, because those have definable weaknesses and strengths. And how I perceive to work that and change that around is to work off of what you guys are saying. That XP idea is good. It's a really good idea to do that. You'd have to kind of figure out if you're going to have different amounts of XP, or if you're doing a milestone leveling and you're going to say, okay, you have to fuse with a demon to get any stronger, which is, I mean, if you got players that are going to play this type of game, they're already expecting that type of change in the game. So I'd say that that's a good way to handle it. Another way I would go with it is build on that and say, okay, you have to do that to level up. And that influences which feats you get to pick from. So that person that you're trying to fuse with has to have either the feat you want or a prerequisite for the feat you want to get it. And you inherit that from them. Inherited skills and stuff like that is something that you fuse demons for. You fuse them for those different things. And that would probably be a good way to do that. To say, okay, you're weak to fire, but if you want to inherit a resistance to fire so that it will do less, or won't activate a push turn, then what you do is you go and you fuse with something that has resistance to fire. And that's where the negotiations come in. And you as the GM might say, well, you haven't built up a reputation with that demon yet. Or you haven't interacted with that demon at all. Are you going to force it to fuse? And then that becomes an option. That pushes you towards one alignment or another. So
I like that too from a GM standpoint. That's going to help focus your sessions, because you're kind of going to know what they're after. They won't throw as many curveballs, because if you know they're going for this type, they're probably going to go, well, you have to go to these locations to find these demons you want. So I like that a lot.
Okie dokie. So we've got the fusion idea kind of set. What about the push turn system? We already said that Pathfinder 2e has a really good idea of working through 3 turns. You've got this and stuff like that. So Pathfinder 2e is an option. You guys thinking that maybe like adding a minor action is appropriate? Kind of what I'm getting.
Yeah, right. In 2E, or are you thinking outside of 2E?
Well, taking inspiration from 2E.
Okay,
So.
gotcha. Right. Yeah, I guess, and this is where maybe my lack of knowledge on it comes in, because there is, like, for, like, Open Legend, a minor action is hit or miss on how powerful it is, depending on how you built your character.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So...
I think it might be nice to, as opposed to phrasing it in specific action terms, you might list certain sets of activities, right? Because, like, even in 2E, let's say you get back one action, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that action is given to a monk, they could flurry and make 2 attacks with it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's given to someone who doesn't have that sort of action economy booster, they might only get 1 attack out of it.
Mm.
So it might be fair enough to say that, like, when you do this, you can make an extra attack, or you can move, or... As opposed to specifically listing the action economy unit, listing the action itself that you would be able to take, because in Open Legend and Pathfinder 2nd Edition and Pathfinder 1st Edition, less so, but still in, like, D&D 5e, there are things that shift how much economy you can get out of each action. So for a relative balancing point, it might be more useful to list it more directly what you're getting out of it.
Right.
So I think one way you could do that is, I mean, people are gonna understand when you guys talk about this type of game in session 0. You could say, hey, this is what we're going to do with the push turn system, or we're going to use this type of system with that. And you can say, okay, that means that minor actions are going to actually be important. Like, they're going to play a role in your strategy. Mm-hmm. And that does lead into a discussion about one of the things that's kind of an unwritten tenet of the Shin Megami Tensei series. It's difficulty. It is not an easy game. I mean, aside from, like, you know, the easy modes and stuff like that they add in DLC. But it's not meant to be an easy series. And if you have a group that's on board with it, you may want to play around with the idea of doing some kind of reincarnation mechanic or something where they are to use our terms, they respawn, but you could say they recoalesce. Their spirit recoalesces, or their tulpa recoalesces and manifests them after their death. So it goes back. Their tulpa, their avatar of existence, not just is an influencer on the world they're trying to make, but it is actually going to resurrect them if powerful enough. If you know, you'd want to put some kind of limit on it, unless you're trying to make something that they're going to try and just bulldoze their way through. I mean, there are murder dungeons like that, and some people like to play them. Not necessarily. That's not what I want from a tabletop, but
though some people do.
Yeah, some people do.
Like people play meat grinder dungeons, like. But yeah.
It would be interesting if you did end up doing some kind of reincarnation mechanic. Not only does it not only is it limited to the amount of levels you have, but I would prefer not to have it in a tabletop, because it tends to lead to abuse of that, because people will just be like, well, then we'll die and we'll come back. Well, yeah, you can do that, but again, there has to be some kind of limiter on it. Maybe it's only you can only do it as many times as your group party level, which would be 1 or 2 or something like that. You get 1 revive. Your tulpa is only that powerful.
Right.
You're not powerful enough to do it yet. So I guess you could limit it that way. Or alternatively, you could make and discuss with your characters, with your players, and say, hey, this is going to be hard, some of you might want to actually use divination or some other things to know what your enemies are going to be weak to.
Aha.
You could actually place an importance on researching your enemies.
Right, which
those
is
type of things.
SMT, yeah.
So
that's good. You make a fair point with the minor action, especially with the session 0 prep, because in Open Legend, I'll even let players use a minor action to gain advantage on their next turn if they do a perception roll to notice some weakness or something, and that could be tied into it.
Yeah, that could be function like the buff system. Buffs and debuffs are actually important in SMT.
Mm-hmm.
But
so yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, we are almost up on our time for this chat. So we have to go ahead and wrap this particular one up. But that's SMT. If you want us to discuss more granularly the idea of converting things or stuff from either SMT in general or just the wide swath of video games or anime or different things out there. Anime might get weird though. Because there's a lot of power scaling that does not make sense in anime. And I say that as a fan, so we're not gonna, I mean, we could try and build Saitama, but it's not a good idea to try and play Saitama, though I have had the desire to, which is odd. But I think that's everything that I've got for right now on this particular subject. You guys got any final remarks before we go?
Try it out. I think this series has a plethora of stuff to use from it. It's I know there's some tricky parts, but dungeon crawl, I mean, Pokemon collecting, basically. I think it'll be great at a table.
All right.
I'm feeling... Oh, yep. I'm feeling that this most easily translates into a one-on-one game, but the strangeness that can result from each person trying to formulate themselves into the most interesting demon could be a fun party dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it's definitely more work.
Mm-hmm. Very true. But if you're willing to put it in, hey, put it down in the comments if you record it, and I'll give it a listen.
Oh yeah.
So.
Or a read.
Yeah, or a read. There actually is a conversion that was done, official conversion of SMT back in 2004, but good luck finding some kind of scan or something of that to look over, because I couldn't.
Oh, dear.
and my Google Foo is, moderate, so good luck to y'all guys. But anyway.
Comment a link if you find it.
Yeah, comment a link, seriously, if you find it. I want to add it to my kind of repertoire to pick from. But
yes.
Anyway, I think that's everything from us. So, as always, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
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 This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Yeah, it moved when y'all said stuff, so it must be recording y'all.
If not, we'll be sad.
Yeah.
Only at the end. We'll have a great time talking. But
yeah. I mean, it's true.
I mean, I'm glad I saw that, because I was like, okay, let's get started. And then I'm like, man, that desktop audio indicator is only moving when I talk. Why is that? I would have been so ticked off. Because yes. I actually want to get this out while, it's still heavy in the search engines. Yeah, one, absolutely. Because it'll hit better, but two, I think it's a fun thing to bring into your games. A fun idea for setting. Minus the penis chariots.
So. Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's y'all's game. You do what you want.
Yeah. House rules.
House rules. It would be so funny if when it was happening, a censor bar actually pops up in that world, just because.
Yep.
Just a little black sensor bar or something like that. That doesn't cover anything. It doesn't actually stop anything. You still see it.
Oh no.
Yeah,
But
it
it's
flails
like-
around.
I like the idea that canonically the sensor bars go over the character's eyes, not the players.
Yeah.
You have to suffer, but your character was spared.
Your character was spared. Okay.